Have you ever felt that something wasn't quite right? That what was said was correct, the tone was light, but there was tension in the air, as if someone's body was whispering a truth that words were trying to hide? Most people ignore these signs, and it's not because they mean to, it's because they never learned to see them. From an early age, we are taught to believe what we are told, to trust what we are shown, to judge by what is visible. But Nietzsche did not trust the surface. He said that words do not reveal the truth, they hide it. Human beings speak to protect themselves, to appear acceptable, to avoid confrontation. But if you look closely enough, you will see that everyone leaves traces, because no one can keep up a mask forever, and the soul, even when wounded, wants to be seen. People don't lie to deceive you, they lie to survive themselves. Most don't even know they're acting, they just repeat an old script, memorized in silence, shaped by fear, rejection, and shame. The man who presents himself as invincible may be begging not to be abandoned. The woman who is too kind may be trying to compensate for her fear of being invisible. And the curious thing is that these people are not trying to deceive the world. They are trying to deceive their own pain. Nietzsche called this the will to power in disguise, a desperate effort to keep the cracks away from the eyes of others. But the signs are there in every gesture that lasts a second too long, in the sudden silence, in the change of subject, in the tense smile that seems glued on, a pause before answering, a laugh that lasts too long, a fleeting glance. All of this is language, and it is truer than any speech, because while the mouth says I'm fine, the body says don't ask me anymore. While someone preaches virtue, the tension in their jaw reveals the effort to appear pure. Nietzsche did not see morality as a sign of superiority, but often as a mask for unresolved feelings. What we criticize most is often what we deny most in ourselves. When someone is obsessed with judging, it is because they cannot deal with their own flaws. When someone avoids vulnerability, they are screaming that they have been punished too much for feeling it. You don't need powers to see others. You need inner silence. Because when you stop seeking confirmation and start paying attention to what lies behind what is said, you discover that no one is really opaque. Everyone's trying to say something, they just don't know how. And maybe now you're beginning to understand why. They're just afraid of being seen. And that fear shapes everything. If on the surface someone seems too confident, too generous, or too indifferent, look again. Behind every exaggeration, there is always an untold story. Nietzsche saw the human soul as something in constant performance, an internal theater staged to survive social judgment. And it is precisely in the moments when the mask falters that the truth begins to emerge. Because no one explains too much, dominates conversations, or nullifies themselves by chance. These behaviors are defense mechanisms refined over time, activated by a deeper and often unconscious fear. The fear of not being loved, not being remembered, not being enough. Every exaggerated choice is a silent cry for security. And most of the time, not even those who act this way, well, why? Nietzsche knew that human beings rarely act out of pure desire. Most act out of the shadow of loss. Loss of status, affection, acceptance. That's why when someone insists too much that they're fine, that they've moved on, that they don't care, that's when we should listen more closely. Because words can lie, but the body cannot. A sudden pause, a shift in gaze, tension in the jaw, all of these reveal more than any speech. When someone criticizes incessantly, it is not just an opinion, it is a confession. The man who mocks those who feel too much may be struggling not to fall apart inside. The woman who ridicules others for their appearance may be trapped in her own mirror. Constant criticism is often a reflection of what the critic rejects most in themselves. Nietzsche pointed out that judgment is not an attack on another, but a desperate attempt to deny a part of oneself. That is why the harshest criticism does not come from people at peace, but from people at war. An internal war, silent but constant. And this conflict appears even in those who seem most secure. Observe those who speak with absolute certainty, who never hesitate, who seem unshakable. In many cases, what you are seeing is guilt dressed up as conviction. The person who needs to prove their worth with every sentence is the same person who deep down does not believe they have it. True peace does not show off. The man who lives claiming that he is always happy, that everything is under control, is more concerned with convincing the world than with feeling something real. Exaggeration is noise, an attempt to drown out doubt. And when someone needs to shout absolute convictions, what they are trying to hide is exactly what they cannot bear to face. The true human being is full of nuance. Those who only speak of certainties are in denial. So the next time you hear someone bragging, dominating a conversation with achievements, or positioning themselves as unshakable, look beyond the narrative. See what the gestures say, the tense jaw, the shoulders always raised, the shallow breathing. The effort to appear calm reveals a fear of being seen as fragile. Nietzsche knew that showing off is often not a sign of self-esteem, but of desperation. And this has never been clearer than in the digital age. Today, performance is daily, incessant. Perfect faces, edited lives, filtered stories. But behind every carefully constructed image lies the anguish of those who don't believe they can be loved in their original form. Those who truly know themselves don't need to be observed, because they already feel whole, even in the dark. And that's why, when you learn to see beyond the obvious, you begin to read what people hide, even from themselves. You start to enter a room, and before you even hear the words, you already know what is being said. Patterns become clear. Someone who interrupts all the time isn't just being inconvenient. They're begging to be remembered. Someone who brags too much isn't showing off their victories. They're hiding their wounds. Reading people doesn't require magic. It requires attention. And Nietzsche gave us that lens. He didn't want us to see through others to gain power, but to stop being deceived, and in doing so, develop real compassion. Because the more you understand the fear behind someone's behavior, the less you hate them. You stop reacting and start understanding. And understanding isn't forgiving everything, but seeing the human being behind the behavior. The mask is not just a defense. It is a desperate cry for acceptance. Nietzsche saw excessive control as a symptom of repressed chaos, but he also saw performance as a disguise for emptiness. And this is even more visible today in the constant exposure on social media, where every perfect image hides an unspoken need. No one posts obsessively because they are complete. They do it because, without the gaze of others, they feel invisible. But what few realize is that this hunger for validation is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. What fills you is not the applause, but the silent presence of who you are when no one is watching. When someone's life becomes a stage, it is because the audience inside is empty. Little by little, you begin to notice what you never noticed before. A forced smile that lasts too long. Change of subject that comes right after an uncomfortable question, a nervous laugh that appears at the wrong time. Each of these gestures is a crack in the emotional armor, and they are not flaws, they are clues. The discomfort with certain ideas, the sudden irritation in delicate discussions, the evasiveness when talking about the past or feelings. All of this reveals the parts that still hurt. Seeing these cracks is not invading, it is witnessing. The truth does not need to be said out loud to be heard. The body speaks, the tone reveals, the silence betrays. And when you learn to really listen, you stop trying to win over others and start to see what's really at stake. Because behind sarcasm, there may be loneliness. Behind arrogance, shame. Behind pride, an old fear of being discarded. Those who see the child hidden behind the wounded adult no longer need weapons, only empathy. And it is this empathy that transforms reading into connection, because no one wants to be deciphered. But everyone deep down wants to be understood. No one speaks solely based on logic. We speak based on pain. Nietzsche understood that the most passionate speeches, the most radical opinions, the most aggressive judgments are almost always born out of unresolved experiences. When someone says they don't believe in love, that all people are selfish, or that happiness is an illusion, they are not just arguing, they are protecting themselves. These statements are armor shaped by disappointment. Therefore, understanding someone is not questioning their ideas with facts. It is asking, what happened to this person that they needed to believe this? Logic in these cases is just a facade built on trauma. The real story lies in what that person never wanted to feel again. And the way someone reacts to the vulnerability of others reveals what they have not yet healed in themselves. There are those who mock fragility, who disregard the mistakes of others, who are bothered by emotions. But often, these are people who have never been allowed to be fragile. Nietzsche believed that true character is not revealed in power, but in restraint. Observing how someone treats those who cannot fight back is an X-ray of their inner state. If that person chooses compassion, there is peace. If they attack or ignore, they still live under the control of their own pain. The truly strong do not need to prove anything, win debates, or humiliate anyone, because they have already conquered their own past. The search for attention does not come out of nowhere either. There are people who seem to live to be seen, heard, noticed. At first glance, this may seem like vanity, but it is often desperation. The child who was ignored became the adult who cannot bear silence. And what seems like excess is actually a request. Every exaggerated joke, every inflated story, every performative post says the same thing. Please see me. And when the attention comes, it doesn't fill the void. It only numbs it. Because the emptiness isn't external. It's an echo of something that was missing in the past, which is now being compensated for with noise. Envy, in turn, is one of the most denied and most revealing feelings. It does not arise from hatred, but from recognition. We attack what we admire when we believe we cannot have it. Nietzsche knew that when we see someone embodying a freedom we repress, or living a love we deny, something in us twists. And it is easier to destroy than to deal with that mirror. The problem is not the other person's victory. It is what it reminds us that we have not achieved. And when the attack comes, disguised as criticism, jokes, or contempt, what is revealed is a soul still at war with its own desire. Those who understand this become immune to the poison of judgment, and even more, free from their own denial. It's hard to admit, but we often attack what we envy. The freedom of others reminds us of the captivity we accept. The courage of others exposes the cowardice we still wear as armor. And the cruelest thing is that this envy doesn't always present itself as anger. It comes disguised as irony, criticism, sarcasm. But deep down, it's just a repressed desire. Nietzsche knew that when the soul does not feel entitled to want something, it prefers to destroy what it would like to be. So when you see someone being ridiculed for being authentic, remember, there is more suffering than malice there. And when you recognize this in yourself, you are set free. Because true freedom begins when you stop denying what you want. But the most striking thing about all this is realizing that no one acts purely on the basis of beliefs. We act on the basis of childhood. Behavior patterns are not rational choices. They're unconscious repetitions of old roles. The woman who never listens may be the child who was never heard. The man who controls too much may be the boy who grew up in chaos. The cold and logical person may have been punished every time they showed affection. What we see in the adult is just the echo of the child trying to survive. Nietzsche did not describe behavior as an expression of ideas, but as an emotional biography written in silence. And every attitude, every quirk, every personality flaw is a chapter in that untold story. All of this leads us to the ultimate truth. Your patterns are a confession, even if you don't say a word. They reveal what you fear, what you haven't overcome yet, where it still hurts. The person who disappears when intimacy approaches is saying, "That's where I was hurt." The one who works too hard is screaming, "I don't know how to be quiet with myself." The one who seduces all the time but never gives in is begging, "Don't see me completely, because you might leave." Nietzsche believed that if we listen to patterns carefully, we will hear the pain before it is even verbalized. And when that happens, there is no more room for judgment, only for understanding. You cease to be a weapon and become a mirror. You see and still offer empathy, and that is the greatest power of all. If this video made you think differently about people and about yourself, tell me, what pattern did you recognize in someone today? And what pattern did you recognize in yourself? Write the word clarity or any other word that makes sense to you in the comments. That is our commitment. And if you've made it this far, like the video and consider leaving a donation of any amount. Because in the end, we're not here to judge. We're here to remind each other of who we really are.